We are back with the same data set that shows the earnings by field of study in the US. And today we're going to review more advanced statistical techniques, linear regression. We're going to use a few linear regressions in order to show what are the most significant features. So we're going to use exactly the same file or the same data set as you can see here. And one of the questions that we asked ourselves last time was whether the location or the state where the institution is located has anything to do with the earnings that are going to be expected by the students graduating from that institution. And I create a linear regression that will show all of the different states because I selected that variable. And also I included the admission rate and the SAT score average. But what we find here, this is the p-value, the last one. You can see here that the only territory or state that is statistical significant is this PR, which is Puerto Rico. All other states or locations really don't have any statistical significance. For that reason, I'm going to take out that variable completely, and I'm going to pretty much replace it with a dummy variable for Puerto Rico, as you can see here. And the other thing that is interesting about this is that this R squared result is under 4%. So in other words, it doesn't predict too well the earnings or the future earnings over the next 10 years. Even though the admission rate into the institution and the SAT average are statistical significant, they really don't predict that much. Now, what that tells us is that probably the words in the field of studies have something to do or a lot to do with the potential earnings. So this is, I'm using text mining for this library TM in R, allows you to pretty much extract all of the words. And what I did is pretty much that. I extracted all of the words from the field of studies, and then I counted the words and just kept the ones that are most common, that repeat more than 200 times. And the beginning, I got these 72 that are listed right here. However, we know that there are a lot of overlapping words in the field of study, so I had to eliminate the ones that were perfectly correlated. So that's what I'm doing here, so I end up with a shorter list. But even after that is done, there is still going to be some words that either are statistically not significant, or they are correlated or very much correlated to some other words. And this is what I took care of down here. I decided to remove by hand or keep by hand all of the words that are important and remove anything that was highly correlated to them. So you're going to notice this in this particular chunk of code. And I decided to do it by hand because, well, that's the only way, one way to make sure that you keep what is more really important, or it makes it easier to read. And I also removed anything that is not statistically significant with this code. And once that was done, I ended up with this particular linear regression that you have the intercept and then all of the coefficients. And at the end here, you're not going to notice now that this pretty much is a good approximation to the earnings. It explains close to 70% of the variance, which is really good. Some of the things that we can note here is that the students graduating from an institution in Puerto Rico would expect to make about $190,000 less over 10 years. I think that's an important finding. The SAT average score for the institution is statistically significant, so for every point in the SAT score, additional point, the student could expect to make $106 more over 10 years. Well, that's not that much. This admission rate, it seems like a lot of money, but remember that this is measuring percentage points, so 0.01 is 1%. So for every single 1% or 0.01, there is going to be that decreases the admission rate for institution. It's going to increase the earnings by $306. So that's what is interesting, but again, it doesn't seem to do a lot with the total potential earnings. Now, what I decided to do is also create some density functions for the SAT scores and also for the admission rate. The SAT scores, you can see here the distribution is like pretty much the median is 1,123. So pretty much the median of institutions are going to require more or less that score in order to admit a student. The 95th percentile is around 1400, and if you are wondering what is the 1500 mark, that's the 99th percentile. Something similar for the admission rate. There is a long tail to the left, which seems interesting. Even the institutions in the 5th percentile that are the most difficult to get into, they accept 28% of the applicants, and 25% of the more prestigious kind of universities or institutions are going to accept more than half. So read through this when you get a chance. This file is going to be available for download. And finally, we get to the words in the fields of studies. Instead of going through each one of these coefficients, I created this diverging bar, and in green you are going to find the words that are going to add to the potential in earnings. At the top you have engineering, which is interesting, more than $200,000. It's interesting because the engineering can be combined with electronics or computer, which will give you more than $300,000 in additional expected, what I call operating income over 10 years. So that's a lot. I mean, accounting is up here as well. You have economics, finance, nursing. On the negative side, and this is an important note of caution here, government is at the very bottom, which I found a little bit intriguing. So when I look at the field of study, government is combined with political science. So you would have government and science together. You have about negative 150,000 and positive 120 something thousand. So it would be in the negative 20,000 or so. So just remember that there are some words. Probably there's going to be more than one word in the field of study, so you have to combine them in order to get an estimate of the potential earnings over 10 years. And lastly, one of the things that we reviewed in the last video is that there are specific degrees that have a lot of variance when it comes to earnings. I think that we saw computer engineering was one, economics was another. So for those, it's really a good idea to check which institutions are going to provide the better outcome. I'm going to compare next finance versus economics. Economics is one that had a lot of variance, so I created this particular 3D chart, and what you'll see in red is economics and in blue finance. For blue, even though there is an outlier here, that's for the finance degree, you'll notice that almost all of the other blue are clustered together. So you are not going to really have too many options when it comes to the finance degrees. You are, as a student, are not going to find too much variance in there. However, for economics, you can see that there are more spread. And this just compares the SAT score, average score, against the admission rate, and then you have the salary, the earnings over the next 10 years right here. So economics here probably would be a good idea to check on universities that provide that, and you can play with this, of course, turn it any way you want. That's going to be available for you as well for download. And these are the conclusions. Please take a look at them. I think that we have pretty much validated all of them and talked about them already, but it's good to have them in a single place. And you are going to be able to download this HTML file under this video. Thank you for watching.